Welcome back to the It's Just Sport podcast, A League of Our Own. I'm Joanna Reardon, and today we have an incredibly special guest in the hot seat. Niamh, would you like to tell us all about who we're going to be interviewing today?
Today we have Beibhinn Parsons with us. We are very excited to welcome Beibhinn to the It's Just Sport podcast, and we have had some recent news that Beibhinn is actually our sport ambassador. So we're delighted to have you on board the team.
Yes, thanks so much for having me, girls. I'm so excited to be part of the team. So yeah, chomping at the bit to get going.
Yeah. So I guess we'll start off with the Six Nations last year. You made such an impact, and you definitely stood out as one of the players. Tell us a little bit about the start and when you actually started playing rugby.
Yeah, so my rugby story or my rugby sort of career has definitely not been linear at all. I sort of skipped a couple of steps and went backwards and forwards. So I think it all started under 10s. I was part of a mixed team and we were in the community games. And I say mixed team very generously because I was the only girl on the team. So it was a full team of boys and myself. And it was really successful, and I really enjoyed that season. But inevitably, I sort of had to put up the rugby boots and go back to football because there was no team for me to join. So like that was like, as a kid, you sort of just take everything as it comes really, and you don't think too deeply about things. So I just went back to football until a couple of years later, a girls' team was set up, and we just had huge success nearly instantly. Like we had massive amounts of numbers coming to training. I remember showing up and there could be like 30, 40 odd girls all training. And it was just a huge success straight off the bat. And I think, it's such a success because we just loved training. Like I loved going to training. It was such good crack. And then from there, I sort of moved on to the Connacht under 18s team. And that was, really, really, really fun. And it was all about the enjoyment at that stage. And then on to the under 18 Irish sevens. And that's sort of when I thought, oh wow, like maybe I'll give rugby a proper go and sort of, let it take priority over football. So after then, I, really started to enjoy rugby. I had no, game knowledge at that point. So I started watching more matches, looking at players, and at that time it was more male players like Brian O'Driscoll that I was seeing. So I, completely fell in love with the whole aspect of rugby and where it could take me. Because with the Irish Sevens, I was brought abroad and I sort of saw, how much experiences rugby can bring. And then I went into my second year with the Connacht under 18s, and we had a sort of shift with management. We got sort of new management and a new schedule, and it became really, really professional. We had like day-long camps, and we would have, lunch in between, and we ended up winning that Interpros. And I think it's tribute to how professional the management was in our sort of routine, and it really, the fruits were, we saw the fruits at the end of it. So then I skipped a lot of steps and I got brought into the Irish senior 15s team. And so I hadn't even played provincial seniors, or I still haven't played a club match. So yeah, that was it. At 16, getting that golden opportunity to join the 15s team was incredible. Like I actually read the email about 10 times, saying that you've been selected for camp. I was like, surely this is not for me. This is wrong. So yeah, that's sort of my rugby journey to date. And I've had a few trips with the Irish senior sevens as well along the way. So yeah, it definitely hasn't been linear, and it definitely isn't your textbook traditional career rugby path, but I'm here anyway.
I was kind of like curious to like ask you, like, obviously you got called up at such a young age and like everything kind of went for you like very quickly. Like, did you take like any moment to be like, oh damn, this is going so well, and then you might have accidentally put pressure on yourself, or were you just kind of going through the motions and you were like, oh, maybe I am really good at this game?
Um, I think at the time I was so shell shocked and I was very overwhelmed. I thought I had to be the finished article at 16. I was comparing myself to the likes of Sene or Emer Considine, and I was just put an awful lot of pressure on myself right off the bat. And I think as a sports person, as any athlete, you always are chasing that next goal. So I was constantly caught up with the next match or the next training. So I never really took note of, how young I was. And now at 19, looking back at who I was at 16, I'm like how it feels like just yesterday that I was brought onto the team. So yeah, no, I definitely did apply some additional pressure to myself, but at the same time, you're always chasing that next goal that you don't really stop and think too much.
What was it like as a 16-year-old kind of going into the senior squad? Because we've spoken to Ellen Malloy before, and she has talked about kind of as a younger athlete ending up on the kind of senior panel, and she definitely was in awe of the other players, like people that she really has seen as icons and stuff. And I think took a little while to kind of collect herself and get used to it. But what was it like at 16 getting into that senior setup?
Yeah, I'd say I'm similar to Ellen in that way, that I was just in awe of the other girls. You watch them play and you sort of follow their story, and then all of a sudden you're in the dressing room with them and you're chatting to them and you're having breakfast, lunch and dinner with them. And it's a strange dynamic that you have to shift. So that definitely took time to transition into the team. It was just a bit of a whirlwind. I just remember sort of constantly like being in a fluster nearly, like trying to it took a while to get settled onto the team, definitely. But the girls were more than accommodating. Like they really made that transition a lot easier than it probably should have been, because, they really, gave me a helping hand and brought me under their wing.
Yeah, and like, was there any like kind of like standout moment for you when you'd like gone into like the camp? Like, was there any player you were like, oh my God, like I need to be like friends with her like ASAP? Like I follow her on Instagram, like that kind of thing. Or were you just like, oh right, this is my new life now?
Yeah, I think embarrassingly enough, I didn't actually know all of the girls, and it was actually quite embarrassing looking back, because I had never really seen them. You'd only hear of the odd few. So the ones that I did know, I was definitely in awe of. And then there were some that I should have known of that I didn't. And I remember coming back to club training, like with the girls at home, and I'd be name dropping people, and they're like, oh my God, you train with her. And I think only in those moments I realized, the magnitude of training with all these phenomenal athletes. But I'd say the standout one would probably be Lindsay Peat. I think she's such like an icon. I feel like everyone should know her story and how she's played on so many Irish teams and has an all-star, and she's just an icon. My dad is a fangirl of her, so yeah, probably Lindsay.
Yeah, no, she's certainly an amazing player, and it was brilliant that the two of you actually were on the Her Sport Award nominations. Like, I think there were two very, very deserving nominations. Do you think the coverage of women's rugby may have kind of contributed to not recognising players? Like, do you think that there needs to be more coverage to get to know, say, the national team? Was that a contributing factor?
Yeah, I think partly it was maybe my ignorance as being a young teen, always looking at the men's team because it was, always in the media, and not really doing that extra searching to find the women's team. But at the same time, I don't think we should have to search to find the women's team. And that's why you girls are doing such an amazing job. Like even with the Her Sport nominations, I got to see and hear about so many different athletes' stories that I'd never know about. So yeah, I think it was partly my own ignorance, and then partly, it wasn't that visible at the time. And I think with the 20x20 campaign and the hashtag I care, like we've seen so much more, like an explosion of, it seems like there's been an explosion of Irish female talent, but it was always there under the surface. But now we can just see it. And yeah, so I think the visibility is coming. But one thing that I think is nearly integral to that is performance. You know, as an athlete and as a sporting team, performance is your only currency. So when we performed well against Scotland and Wales at the start of the Six Nations, I think that provided so much momentum for us. And we were in the media and we got to see different players and there was different interviews going around. And it was like a really exciting time to be following women's sport because we were performing well and because we were winning matches. So I think part and parcel of it is, you know, the visibility that media has to contribute to and that they have to pull up their socks a bit. Then also us, you know, performing well and that creating that snowball effect.
Yeah, like rugby is kind of one of those sports, anyways, that would be, I suppose, like male dominated in general. Like, I mean, it's kind of like the when people like view rugby, like it's big macho, like angry, well, not angry men, like gentlemen. Um, but like there can obviously be like with that, and like I suppose with the like masculinity that exists in rugby, there can obviously be a little bit comments, women's rugby isn't great, or like I'm not that into it, or like women shouldn't play rugby. Like one standout moment for me was I was at the Women's Rugby World Cup and where like the section that I was in, some nuns came in and they were like sitting behind me and they were like all for the game and everyone thought, oh, the nuns won't like this game like whatsoever. But they were like the craziest fans I've ever like seen in my life. So like have you kind of like seen that as well like a couple of times? I know you're a lot younger than kind of the rest of them, but like have you seen that as well with social, like people going, oh, like Beibhinn, like rugby isn't great, like get a life, like move on.
Um, I think honestly, I've been so lucky that like maybe I'm just blind to all these like these comments and stuff, and I just block them out subconsciously. But as a kid, even like I've always been surrounded by unassuming feminists. Always like I was never really told no, you can't do that or no, you shouldn't do that. Like of course you get the odd comment like, well, that's a very rough sport for girls or those sort of things, but like I was always surrounded by such an empowering, like supportive network of people that went out of their way to make things more professional for women and make, you know, what stands out to me is, we didn't have a girls' team, and two of the men from home, two people's dads were like, that needs to change. Let's change that. We'll coach them. And it's just been so successful since. Like myself and two other girls from that Ballinasloe team right now, part of the Irish Sevens program, like contracted athletes. And it's incredible to think that if these people didn't make those steps forward, where would we be? Like my life would be so much different. I wouldn't have experienced half the things I have. So me personally, I haven't really had to deal with people putting obstacles in my way. It's always been a clear path and a springboard to move forward. So yeah, no, I've definitely heard people's stories where they're being put down and stuff like that, but I can't relate to that really.
Yeah, so it sounds like we need to get some more dads on board to help push the boundaries for women's sport.
I really thought Neve was going to say more haters, like there for a second.
No, no, but it is, and like, look, O'Driscoll and O'Connell have spoken about it. Shane Lowry has spoken about it, and O'Connell in particular kind of said, he was a bit oblivious to it before he actually had a daughter. Do you know what I mean? And like, you can't fault players. Kind of when they're playing, they're so busy, and that's what I'd say. When you're kind of being a little bit hard on yourself, not saying no, the players like that you're coming in to play with, like you're probably so focused on doing what you're doing, and then if you kind of got parachuted in unexpectedly as well, they mightn't have given you enough time to do some homework. But look, it's definitely something that there are more men and women. Like obviously you see people say like, oh, women should be promoting women's sport, but like we do need the support of men and say prominent figures out there to help change the opinions of young boys, and then also their peers. Like I think like certainly myself, like my dad would support me in what I do, and he has two daughters and he'd like push us as much as he'd push us more than I'd say than he'd push my brother like in sport. But I think a lot of dads with daughters can kind of help push the boundaries. But yeah, like on the piece kind of around the commentary that can kind of come, and look at a lot of it's social media, which you can I guess, turn off if you like, if you're lucky. But I know that Anna Capeless has spoken out about it, saying like no one, like the people that are saying no one cares about the Six Nations and that. But you're kind of saying that you kind of switch off and you just kind of take no notice of it, is it?
Well, like I definitely saw the comments and things like that, and it is hurtful. It sort of undermines what you're doing, but at the same time, you have to take it with a pinch of salt. If people are saying these things, who really are these people? Like, are they important? Are they your coaches or your parents or your peers? And if they're not, do they really know how much effort you're putting in? Like, if they, as Anna said, she put it really nicely, like they wouldn't dare say those things if they knew how much work that goes into it, how many training sessions and injuries and disappointments and ebbs and flows of being an athlete. If they knew how difficult it could be, they wouldn't comment those things. So, you would wish in an ideal world that people would be more supportive and they wouldn't undermine how hard you're training or how hard you want to perform well and wear a green jersey for your country. But at the end of the day, some people are just gonna say whatever they want, and that's part and parcel of having social media. So
I think with like we were going to mention Serena Williams later, but I guess we can mention her here as well. But like, people would comment on her and say her sporting career, and people can be quite mean. And it's around women's sport. It's around, look, people are harsh when soccer players aren't performing as expected, or rugby players are, in any, whether it's male or female, people can be very harsh. And there's definitely the people that are sitting behind the screen, not necessarily leading their best sporting lifestyle. Do you know what I mean? And you're kind of saying, like, if you look at Serena, it's like, well, how many Grand Slams have you got? Do you know what I mean? You can't be, giving people such a hard time and then, not understand the work that it takes to get into, these positions. And also, like, it's very easy to judge from afar. And I think recently, there's a lot more kind of highlighting going on of women's sport and how much it takes, and trying to really hit that message home that female athletes are working just as hard as male athletes, and in some cases harder, because women always have to kind of, I feel, still at the moment, prove themselves a bit more, to get that recognition that the male players sometimes can get and sometimes take for granted, I suppose.
Yeah, and even like, I'm lucky enough, I'm in college, Zoom University, I can sort of shift my hours to suit my training. But people that have rigid jobs or working in healthcare, like Linda is a nurse, and Malloy, and there's just it's so demanding to play international rugby and to have a full-time job and kids, and like, there's a lot that goes into it that people probably don't even realize.
Yeah, like I was kind of curious, like about your like schedule, like, and like not what you do, but like what your like training schedule and what your week kind of looks like. I know COVID has obviously thrown things into a bit of disarray for you, but like like, do you get up like early in the morning, hit the gym, and then do your work, and then go out then in the evening and kind of kick around or different things like that? Or how is it working for you at the minute, especially in UCD all by yourself?
Yeah, so I suppose it changes weekly, basically, because I'm with I've recently joined the Sevens program, and I'm obviously with the Irish 15s as well. So it sort of goes week to week basis, and lucky enough, I get my schedule sent to me on like a Sunday, and I'll have more in advance. So Tuesday, Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday would be Sevens days. And that would be like morning, so like 8 a.m. to about max 2 p.m. And then 15s would be Tuesdays, Thursdays, Saturdays, Sundays. And when they overlap, our S&C coaches chat and they make sure that, the load isn't too much and that we're not pushing ourselves too hard, or that we have time to recover and stuff. So on a load perspective, that all gets dealt with. And then in terms of, uni, there's some assignments that I have to get done and some tests that I have to do and some tutorials and labs. But apart from that, like, the lectures are posted online. I can sort of come in and out of them as I please. And so in that sense, it's been a great opportunity for me to take on being on two international teams. I think on a normal year, I'd find it a lot more difficult for that aspect. So yeah, no, it's fairly flexible at the moment in terms of university, but then with rugby, it's quite full on.
What are like the different demands between sevens and 15s? Like for a couch potato like myself, like what are the different things you have to you do? So like I would like this probably is gonna be very controversial, but like whenever the sevens is on in the Olympics, like I get like I'm like woo, like this is fun, you know?
Yeah.
Like is it as fun like playing it compared to the 15s or like what? I know you probably can't say, but like like what are you doing like differently in sevens that you wouldn't be doing like in 15s, you know?
Yeah, I suppose the main difference is sevens is short, sharp bursts of like massive high intensity work. So, speed is a huge aspect of sevens. There's only 7 people on your team and it's 7 minutes a half. So, you've huge acres of space, acres space of to run and attack into, and then acres of space to defend. I suppose in that sense, it's very, your body and how well you gym and how fit you are and how fast you are. It's very dependent on how athletic you are, I think. And then on the 15 side of things, there's a lot more strategy involved. You can kick into the backfield, you've power plays and moves off set piece. So there's probably a lot more minor details, I'd say, in 15s, and that's another reason why I love 15s. So yeah, no, they're vastly different. Of course, the skills of passing, tackling are all the same, but in terms of actually playing a match, they're hugely different.
Yeah, that was my question. I wanted to know that as well. I wanted to know what the kind of comparisons were and stuff. But yeah, no, it's interesting to hear, and they're both certainly entertaining and exciting to watch. On that, like women's rugby is growing more interest all the time. Like I think definitely the Six Nations, a lot of people tuned into it, and certainly people that I know were like, oh yeah, like can't wait for the next match and definitely going to watch it next year and all that, which is great to hear that more people are investing interest and supporting the team. When you look at, say, your male counterparts, like someone, whether they're kind of similar age to you or whatever, that's also involved in rugby, sometimes they have different opportunities to women. What does it feel like as a female player, and what do we need to do to maybe push more opportunities for women in rugby and, kind of balance it out a little bit?
Yeah, that's a great question. You see with the men, they have academy teams the whole way up, since they're nearly infants, and they have this, really defined pathway that they can see. So many role models have, there could be someone from their club on the international team that they've seen move through these pathways and take all of these steps. And then on the female side of things, those sort of foundations haven't fully been laid. Of course, there's huge work in getting that done, and it's emerging, and you can see the talent growing from it. There's a talent identification squads now, and so the pathways are being built. So I think the main thing would be to have those pathways steady set, and you can see people progress through the stages. I think that would bring on women's rugby immensely, and it has. Like they have been doing that, and it has been showing. Enya Breen is probably your textbook example of someone that has gone through all the minis to, underage to club, provincial, now seniors. So it does work, and I think we need to just sort of pump in the resources into that, and we'll see the great crop of athletes at the end of it.
Yeah, it's obviously something that's going to take a bit of time to develop, and hopefully we'll see different parts around the country that will be kind of helping get those things set up, and that people will be offering resources, to make sure that the development can continue. Obviously with the Six Nations last year, like the men were able to continue, and the women's competition had to stop, and that I would say largely is down to the professionalism within the sport, that a lot of the women across a lot of the countries, are working, and it was not as easy, say, to contain players. What's it like? I know obviously you're in college at the moment, but maybe you kind of see it within the squad that people are trying to balance work and balance professional. or playing for their country. Is professionalism in women's rugby something that we need to push for in Ireland? Like obviously in England it has happened, and how much would that help rugby here?
Yeah, definitely I want to, of course I'd love to be a contracted 15s player. That's all of our goals, to have that opportunity. It means that you can like give it more time. Like you don't have to, once you're getting a bit of revenue, you don't have to do that part-time job or that full-time job, or you can take off extra hours. Some of the girls had to use up all of their holidays to make training camps, or they had to use their sick days, and things like this. If there was that professionalism, we wouldn't have to make those sort of sacrifices. Yeah, you see with the English girls, like they have such squad depth, and they have a huge pick of players to pick from, and they get constant game time every weekend, and they're just becoming these amazing athletes that are so, there's like no stone left unturned because they have that time to invest into their sport. And I think currently with our squad, we have great resources. We have the same facilities as the men, with the indoor pitches and stuff. And I think already we've seen how beneficial that can be. So if that was just accelerated and there was more put into it, I think Irish rugby, women's rugby would grow hugely. Yeah, I'd love to see it, more of a professional approach soon in my career. If that was a possibility with 15s, I'd love it.
Yeah, like you just want like rugby like player in your like not just in your Instagram bio but in your contract like as well. Like that would be quite nice to see. Obviously like last year it was an incredible kind of breakout, like year for you, and like you'd won the Guinness Rugby Writers of Ireland Women's Player of the Year award. That's a very long title. Somebody needs to like lower that, like make that less. But like overall for you, like I know it was a bit of like a dodgy year for kind of everyone involved, but like seeing you obviously rise from strength to strength, like were you just like, man, 2020 was actually good for me? Like sorry it sucked for the rest of you.
That's gas. Yeah, I'm so busy with the Leaving Cert, and then obviously trying to balance the Six Nations, and my main goal was trying to keep both balls in the air, quite literally. So yeah, by the end of 2020, I looked back and I was able to like compete in the Six Nations and contribute to that goal. Then I was also able to study for the Leaving Cert. I never had to sit, but at the end of it, I sort of weighed up what I wanted my goals for that year to be, and I was able to achieve them. I'm in UCD now, and I'm part of that Astra Academy, so that box is sort of ticked, and I'm really happy with how that went. And then of course, getting to put on that green jersey in the midst of all that is such a bonus. So yeah, I think 2020 could have been worse. On my side, it was quite a good year. And then regarding the Guinness Rugby Writers Award, I was absolutely baffled by that. To even be nominated for something like that or be considered would have been far outside of any of my expectations. I know I'm not the finished article yet, and my toughest trainings and most gruesome matches are still to come, and I'm not naive about that. There'll be highs and lows, but that was a major high, and I still have to pinch myself when I think about that, because it just seems like, what the hell, like it's all come so quickly. But yeah, that was huge.
Do you have it like on the mantle, like showing like your parents and siblings, like, yeah, I'm class? Like, is it like my house where like the best award is like over the dinner table, like for everyone to
see? Yeah. It's at home. I gave it to my mom, and I said, put it wherever you want. So whatever she wants to do with it, wherever she wants to put it, that's where it'll be.
Yeah, no, it's definitely been a great year for you. And we look forward to seeing you in action again soon. The Six Nations are obviously just around the corner, and it's going to be a new format. How excited are you, and what can we kind of expect from the Irish team this year?
Oh my God, I cannot wait to get a match in. Like it feels like a lifetime ago since I've, put on a jersey, put on some boots and a gum shield and gone up like against an opposition that aren't my own teammates. So uh, yeah, no, we're all chomping at the bit to compete in the Six Nations, and there's a huge competition within the squad. People are really putting their hands up for jerseys, and I couldn't list out the starting squad or even the top 23 if you paid me, because there's so much competition and there's such a buzz around training. We've brought so much intensity to it, and our coaching staff are just amazing. The trainings have been great, and our coach Gracie said the other night, let's not ever, let's not waste a single training session, and we're not, every session we're training how we want to play in that Six Nations, and that's our huge goal. So yeah, no, cannot wait to get a match in. Trying my best to put my hand up for a jersey, so hopefully that'll go my way. And then in terms of what you're going to see, I think you'll just see this huge excitement. We've been so grateful to be able to train like in the midst of this whole pandemic, and it's not something that we take for granted at all. I'm hugely appreciative of it. So I think we'll really want to perform and, add a bit of excitement and a bit of light to the people at home that haven't been able to train or to play. So yeah, no, I absolutely can't wait for it.
Yeah, I'd say you're buzzing to get on. Like everybody just wants to like get back to sport, get back to playing and stuff. So yeah, it's certainly something that we're excited for, and we'll be making sure that everybody knows when the matches are on, and we're wishing everybody the best of luck with it.
Yeah.
I do have one question, and it's kind of on that piece of inspiring younger girls. So like, I think there's a lot of different pressures that can come for female athletes, and like a lot of people I think experience it maybe as they're growing up in their teen years. And I think sometimes people can find it difficult maybe to manage training for performance, and then also say the societal pressures that people have around body image and that. A lot of people have opinions, and as we've already kind of said before, like who are these people to talk and that type of thing. But sometimes I think athletes and particularly like younger girls can find it hard to drown out commentary. Like what we'd say is like from every different sport, like you're to be fit, you're to be strong, and like you're pushing the boundaries for performance. But what kind of advice would you give to younger girls that maybe might be struggling a little bit with managing, say, comments from people that really have no place to be saying things to them, and still wanting to participate in sport? Because sometimes it can actually push young girls out of sport because they just find it all a bit too much,
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. I think it's a huge component of sport that isn't talked about enough, and especially in the female game, body image is a massive thing. It's like, to be a runner, you have to look like this, and to be, a swimmer, you need to look like this. And, that's not the case. There's no one size fits all. It's any size can fit, and I think that's one of the great things about rugby is there's a huge spectrum of shapes and sizes that are all valued on a rugby pitch. But I know that's not always the case on every team. And advice I'd give to young girls is that, food is fuel. If you change your mindset to, one of performance and not one of aesthetic, you'll see the benefits of that, and you'll see how well you can perform and train. You don't need a six-pack to be an athlete. You don't need a six-pack to play for an Irish team or your club team or any team. You need to be fueled, and you need to, have energy to output onto the pitch or to wherever you're training. Yeah, it's a massive topic that I think needs to be talked about more, because it can be overwhelming at times, and you can think that the way your body looks means the way you play. You can equate the two, that, oh, if I look like this, I'll play like this, or I'll be this type of athlete, when that's not the case at all. Your body changes from day to day, from week to week. You shouldn't try to put a cap on it. As long as you're sleeping well, training well, your body will take care of itself in that sense. You don't need to look like anything.
I think that's really good advice, and look, it's something that obviously we're passionate about, trying to get that out there to, you know, younger girls and, you know, people of all ages, if they walked away from sport, that, you know, come back and there is a place for you in sport. But yeah, I guess, you know, on the the comment of, say, having a six pack and playing internationally, or, you know, competing internationally, you actually often go and look at athletes from different sports, and that's and what people think a body type is within a sport, or these certain, like you're saying, the aesthetics, is actually often not the case in most sports. Like, you'll find that lots of people don't have six packs, and they can be the people that are, you know, top of the podium at the Olympics, or, you know, winning World Cups, or whatever it might be that the pinnacle of the sport is. So I think it's really well put, and certainly it's something that we're trying to get out there to young girls. And the food is fuel piece is something that's really important. And I think, like, it's something that I've almost kind of put into my own mindset in the last few years, is that actual one-liner, which is really funny. But I think it's changing people's mindset and realizing that, like, you know, your body is what's going to get you there, and you have to, you know, look after it and feed it and all that kind of thing to get to where you want to be. You know, sometimes chasing these kind of whatever societal norms or, you know, ideals might be, is not going to get you where you want to be on the performance or the sports side of thing, which is maybe what might make somebody happier at the end of the day, you know.
Yeah.
But Joanne, have you any more questions?
No, like literally, like what you said was bang on the money. Like, you know, I remember like there was like Glossier over in America, they did a body hero campaign, and instead of choosing like models that we all kind of would see every day, they chose women's basketball athletes, and they chose like a wide variety. Like everyone, like I was like really annoyed. We all got like this Glossier thing in the package, like some like really cool people, and it was just like, oh, you get like soap, like a body scrub bar of soap. You got like an oil and like a cleanser, like a body cleanser. I remember thinking like, this is so cool. Like you'd never see this like at the end of the day. And we got to interview one of the athletes, and she basically said what you said. She was like, I did it because like my why is to inspire other girls who necessarily don't look like an athlete, or the perception of an athlete like every
Yeah.
single day. So yeah, no, like what you said is totally true. And you're definitely, not to sound like my mother, you're definitely a wise head on young shoulders. But
Yeah.
no, it was really, really nice to be talking to you, babe, and we really do appreciate you giving up your time, and we look forward to seeing you on the rugby pitch. I actually now have my women's rugby jersey, so I can't wait to actually wear that, because the game was postponed, and my mother was like, typical, the time you get involved, they don't want you playing. So now I get to wear it and wear it with pride. So yeah, no, really appreciate you giving up your time.
Oh,
Yeah.
thanks so much for having me, girls. It's been great. You know, really, really good fun. I'm definitely not great at these whole podcast interview things. Thanks
No,
so
I
much.
think you did brilliantly, and thanks so much for taking the time. Like, we gave you a couple of difficult questions in there, and I think you gave some people some really good advice and insights. So thanks a million for sharing, and the honesty that you had throughout the whole thing. And we can't wait to see you on the pitch again soon.
Thanks, girls.